Now, as many of you know, I generally speaking don't do a lot of reporting of the news on this channel. I don't really go over speculation that much, and I generally speaking like to stick to the facts. However, this article broke a couple of hours ago, and I'm not gonna lie, it had my interest. So, it's titled Sources. Blizzard cancels StarCraft First-Person Shooter to focus on Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2. Now, I'm obviously a massive StarCraft 2 fanboy, but in general, I love Blizzard games. I have played pretty much every single one out there, and I'm definitely gonna go ahead and play whatever they will release over the next couple of years as well. So this definitely caught my interest, and obviously, since I do like to check in with basically all of the Blizzard-related subreddits on a daily basis, I noticed that on pretty much all of them, they are discussing this news right over here as well. So I figured, let us go over it together, and I will try and give you my thoughts. So this is an article written by Jason Schreier. In general, there's not really a whole lot of gaming journalism. I feel like most of the gaming journalism out there is mostly just people repeating what other people have already written about. However, Jason Schreier, he's generally speaking been very on point with releases in the past, and I do think that generally speaking, whenever he announces things like this, it is at the very least, obviously, still to be taken with a grain of salt because it's not official news, but at the very least, it's more accurate than just a website that just simply prints what other people have already printed. I guess you don't technically print a website, but you get what I'm trying to say. Anyways, let us go ahead and read through this article, and I will try and give you my thoughts. And by the way, for you interested, I'll go ahead and post a link to it down below in the description of the video as well. Blizzard has cancelled a StarCraft first-person shooter that had been in development for the past 2 years, according to 3 people familiar with going-ons at the studio. The main reason Blizzard told staff was to put more resources into the Diablo and Overwatch franchises. Now, I know immediately some of you are thinking back of StarCraft Ghost. StarCraft Ghost was essentially a shooter that apparently Blizzard never officially cancelled many years ago. We knew that they were working on it, but it never got released. And apparently, you know, as companies do, resources and people switched in the companies towards different projects. So that's the first thing that I immediately had to think about when I saw this headline and when I saw the title, StarCraft and a first-person shooter. One important distinction to make is that this is very clearly referencing a first-person shooter. StarCraft Ghost was supposed to be a third-person shooter, if I'm not mistaken, but it's interesting nonetheless. So, the project, which was codenamed Ares, so that's the StarCraft First-Person Shooter project, was described to me as like Battlefield in the StarCraft universe. And I saw a tweet earlier today as well from Greg Black, who used to work at Blizzard Entertainment. And he wrote the following. He says, "Wow, I can't believe Blizzard cancelled Ares, Battlefield StarCraft. That was definitely the project I was most excited about when I was there. Sad to see it didn't work out." It certainly is an interesting thought process though, right? The StarCraft universe in a Battlefield kind of format, but it very specifically does reference a first-person shooter. Anyways, the team had built prototypes in which the player, as a Terran Marine, could gun down Zerg aliens, and there were plans to experiment with playable Zerg as well. Although one person who saw builds of the game last year told me that it seemed like development progress was slow. A second one said it came as a massive shock when Blizzard cancelled it a couple of weeks ago. A third person said it was looking quite good. When asked for comment, Blizzard sent over a lengthy statement. Okay, we'll read that in just a little bit as well. So nobody was laid off as a result of the cancellation, and according to 2 staff, Blizzard told the team that Ares was axed alongside a second unannounced mobile project so that the company could move many of them to the upcoming Diablo 4. And this one is kind of shocking to me. I mean, we've heard a lot of rumors of Diablo 4 for a while, and Overwatch 2. Both of which are expected to be Blizzard's marquee announcements at this year's Blizzcon. Of course, as we saw last year, when it comes to Blizzcon announcements, anything can change, right? That's kind of the thing in gaming, journalism in general. Everything can always change at any given moment. Both of those games will be key parts of Blizzard's strategy in the years to come. We reported extensively on Diablo 4, codenamed Fenris, late last year. And what we've heard about Overwatch 2, or whatever it winds up being called, it is that it'll have a large player versus environment, a PvE element. A couple of Blizzard people have compared it to Left 4 Dead. Ares, which is the StarCraft battlefield, first entered development in 2017 as an experiment to see what the team could do with StarCraft StarCraft on the Overwatch engine. An engine is a suite of tools and reusable code that developers use to make games. Anyways, let us go ahead and read a little bit more here. Actually, I didn't realize this part just yet. Heading up Ares was the veteran Blizzard director Dustin Browder, who formerly led Heroes of the Storm in StarCraft 2, and it was planned to be the next game in the StarCraft universe. I actually was wondering for a while what Dustin Browder was up to. I mean, he still worked at Blizzard. It was clear he was working on an unannounced project, and I guess it may have very well been Project Ares then, which apparently, I don't know if it's really been gutted though, right? It says that they've shifted people away, which means that the idea is probably still there, but the resources are currently spent elsewhere. Anyways, let us read the Blizzard statement. So here it is. We don't generally comment on unannounced projects, but we will say the following. We always have people working on different ideas behind the scenes, including on multiple projects right now. But the reason we tend not to discuss them publicly is because anything can happen over the course of development, as has been the case at Blizzard numerous times in the past. There is always the possibility that we'll make the decision to not move forward on a given project. Announcing something before we feel it's ready stands the risk of creating a lot of frustration and disappointment, both for our players and us, not to mention distraction and added pressure for our development teams, which I think is what this is gonna bring anyways. Anyways, we'll go over that in a little bit. We pour our hearts and souls into the work, and as players ourselves, we know how exciting it can be to see and know with certainty that a new project is coming. Knowing that changes or disappointments can happen doesn't make it any less painful, and we have to shelve a project or when an announcement doesn't go as planned. We always make decisions about these things regardless of the ultimate outcome on how things might be interpreted based on our values. We get what they're trying to say, right? Anyways, so there's a couple things to discuss here. First off, a StarCraft First-Person Shooter. Now, I can imagine that a lot of people read this and immediately get very disappointed. The fact that at the very least it's been put on the back burner, right? It may very well be cancelled permanently, but at the very least it's not going to come out anytime soon. I certainly would be very interested in giving that a try as well. And as you guys know, I love especially strategy games. I'm not entirely sure if a StarCraft First-Person Shooter would be a game that I would dive headfirst into, but I'd certainly be interested in giving it a try. It's an interesting discussion, though, because immediately as soon as this news broke, which I am inclined to believe, a lot of people immediately got very angry and frustrated. It's interesting. I'm pretty sure that a big gaming developer, right, like for example Blizzard Entertainment, has literally dozens of projects that they are working on with small development teams where they're just simply trying out stuff. And some of them obviously turn into released products, but I can imagine probably 80+% doesn't, right? It makes sense to at the very least try and see what happens. I mean, I can imagine since the thought process of StarCraft Ghost was still there from all those many years ago, I can imagine that a lot of people were really excited to see how the Overwatch engine works out in the StarCraft universe, right? What happens if you put the StarCraft universe in the Overwatch engine? Let's go ahead and give it a try. And even though it's obviously going to cost money in order to pay the people and the developers and whatnot that have to work on that, it makes sense because some of those projects will ultimately lead towards a released product. Now, yeah, I'm not necessarily all too disappointed that the StarCraft First-Person Shooter doesn't release, although I do hope that at some point they do continue down the path. I think a lot of people, ever since the news broke about StarCraft Ghost, like over a decade ago at this point, I think a lot of people would be interested in playing a Ghost or a Marine or something from like a first-person or like a third-person perspective and see what the swarm would look like when you're fighting like that. But at the very least, for now, no StarCraft First-Person Shooter. Now, we've heard quite a lot of rumors about Diablo 4 over the last couple of years. I think a lot of people, basically when the news of Diablo Immortal first broke last year, I'm sure a lot of you remember that, right? The mobile game for Diablo. I tried it out, by the way, at Blizzcon at the time. I thought it was really good. But anyways, we can talk about that in the future. If anyone likes these kind of videos, let me know down below, by the way. Diablo 4 basically at that point was all but confirmed. Essentially, the blog post that was released after BlizzCon, basically it mentioned that good things come to those who wait. It was pretty clear that Diablo 4 was likely gonna be in development. Now, this is honestly the first time, though, I have heard of Overwatch 2. For those of you that are relatively new to the channel, you may not be aware, but I used to play a lot of Diablo 3 years ago, especially when it first came out, also with the Reaper of Souls expansion. And I also actually played a ton of the Overwatch beta when that first was announced. Now, I kind of steered away from them at some point with Diablo. It, turns out to be a grind, which I don't mind, but at some point, especially if you want to release content on it, it's just a difficult game for me to live stream or to make YouTube videos by, because it's just the same thing every time. Overwatch obviously is definitely a really popular game. I think Overwatch League is doing extremely well right now as well. And in general, it seems like a lot of people are still very much so enjoying that. I like to tune into the Overwatch League every once in a while myself as well. It's a lot of fun. Can be a little bit chaotic, and I think the observer experience can be a little bit tricky sometimes. But in general, especially seeing it at Blizzcon last year, it is massive, right? A lot of people are really, really into Overwatch. Now, what kind of strikes me as odd here is that this very clearly references it as Overwatch 2. For some reason, that seems unlikely to me. I mean, obviously I don't have any insider information, but it seems like the Overwatch name, at the very least the brand name, is very well known right now. And a lot of people are very much so interested in trying out a campaign version of Overwatch, right? If I could play a campaign of Overwatch, that'd be awesome. I would love to do that. I've actually, always really liked the multiplayer of Overwatch, but just seeing a little bit more backstory through cinematics and a campaign and maybe going through the different characters and maybe all of them have a mini campaign or a story, that would be awesome, right? I think a lot of people would be interested. But I don't think it really makes sense to release that as a standalone. I kind of feel like that would make an excellent addition to the existing game of Overwatch, right? I think a lot of people would definitely be interested in giving that a try if that ever releases in the future. I personally certainly would like to do a playthrough of that. But if it's PvE based, I certainly think a lot of people are interested in giving that a try. But I'm not sure whether or not that has to be a standalone game. Now, the last thing that I wanted to discuss today is just BlizzCon in general. So BlizzCon takes place in November usually. I think this year it's November 6th or 7th or something along those lines. I've been there over the last couple of years. Definitely my favorite event every year. Over the last few years, right, Blizzard hasn't really announced any major projects. I think in their mind, probably Diablo Immortal is a major project, but obviously that kind of backfired a little. We don't need to get into details there. I think a lot of people are very familiar with that, but Diablo Immortal certainly, I think, is going to be very successful, even though you and me might not necessarily be the target audience for it. I think a lot of people are certainly interested in giving it a try. And while I don't really play a lot of games on mobile myself, I certainly do look forward to grinding some dungeons in the airplane or, whenever I'm going anywhere. I think it's going to be a very popular game, especially for mobile gamers. And, in the grand scheme of things, I think it makes a lot of sense as well. If you're a gaming developer and you have a lot of resources to try different projects on, it seems odd to me to not try to tap into a mobile market. I feel like the main mistake made with the announcement of Diablo Immortal was announcing it at BlizzCon, right? Because BlizzCon is obviously the more hardcore gaming audience. A lot of people have been playing Blizzard games for 20 plus years, and they expected PC titles, and then you're like, hey, we get a Diablo 3 kind of thing on the mobile, and everyone kind of was a little disappointed. I feel like that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like if they would have announced it at a Gamescom, or they would have announced it at an E3 or something like that, I feel like it would have been just fine and nobody would really be too upset. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about is the potential announcements at BlizzCon this year, because I kind of do feel like it's an important one. I mean, the entire stock price of not just Blizzard, but most of the gaming industry has gone down quite a bit. It's recovered, obviously, in 2019 so far, as many stocks have. But in general, the gaming industry certainly seems to have taken quite a hit over the last 365 days or so. And it's actually been quite some time since Blizzard released something big. I mean, this is once again, this whole video is purely speculation, right? But when it comes to BlizzCon this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to get a new Hearthstone expansion, probably a new Overwatch hero, or maybe this Overwatch PvE stuff, right? Which I would be very interested in. We're probably gonna get a World of Warcraft expansion once again. But all of those things, outside of maybe the Overwatch 2, which we just heard about, are kind of expected, right? We kind of expect that more content is gonna be added to the existing games. And for games like World of Warcraft and Hearthstone especially, the new development on new content, or the development rather on new content, has been extremely consistent over the years, and we kind of just know that there is gonna be more things, right? It's been a while since there's been like one big hyped up announcement, and I think the last one was probably Overwatch, right? Which is in, when was that? Hold up, let me look it up. All right, so it seems like they announced Overwatch in 2014 and then released it in 2016. It's been a while since a new major title has been released, right? Since a new major project has been announced. So I think that Diablo 4 makes a lot of sense, because basically all of the signs are pointing in that direction, and I think a lot of people would be interested in giving that a try. Once again, me included as well. But I think this year's Blizzcon is gonna have to be a big one. I'm not sure exactly what else they could go ahead and announce, but let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. I'm interested to hear what you would like to see from Blizzard. And let me know as well if you are like really disappointed in the cancellation of the StarCraft project. I mean, for me, yeah, I guess I'm a little disappointed, but it's not like I'm all too invested into the, you know, first-person shooter genre in the first place. And obviously it makes sense, right? I saw a lot of people getting very angry, but it kind of makes sense that you're giving a lot of different projects a try, and then you just release the ones that actually are good, right? I mean, you wouldn't want a major publisher to release a game that in their eyes isn't even good, right? If they would only release the best products, obviously you end up probably also having the best customer base in the end. And yeah, I'm curious to see what's gonna be next. But anyways, let me know what you thought as well of this kind of video. I don't usually make these kind of videos. This kind of feels more like a podcast to me, where I'm literally just sitting here talking. And I mean, I can definitely do more of these kind of like podcast reporting kind of videos in the future if anyone's interested. I kind of always feel like I'm rambling a lot and I get sidetracked, but I know some people might be interested in it. But let me know down below if you're interested in hearing more. But for now, guys, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day, okay? Do not forget to smile. And I'll see you once again tomorrow for another video.